because it was either my Aunt Fanny or my Uncle Junie, and they were like, Philco Joe! So I was like, you know what, I like that. Philco Joe. What up, everybody? This is Philco Joe, back for the part 2 of the hands tutorial. And I apologize for the delay, but I am here today and, as promised, going to bring you part 2. Just to pick up where we left off, I said that it's always good to start with general shapes whenever drawing hands, and the shapes that I had recommended were really just one shape, which is a wedge shape. You could do it some sort of like this, and then go in and find the knuckles and break it down like so. Then go in and find the middle knuckles in the fingers, break those down. Bring a triangular wedge off of the wrist, the part of the hand that attaches to the wrist, just down here, and then bring out your thumb, right? I also mentioned how instead of drawing the hand by itself, I always find it helpful to, besides drawing a wedge shape, because it helps to, let's say I want to draw a guy in space, right, who's in three-dimensional space. Here's his head, here's his body, and let's say he's raising his arm up this way, right? So I would just sort of draw in a cylindrical shape for his arm, and draw in a cone shape for his forearm, and in there, just kind of squiggle in a wedge shape for his hand, right? So what I had mentioned last time is to always draw the hand as an extension of the arm. It just always makes it easier for me to, put things together, figure out how to problem solve, and the most important reason is to understand what's going on, right? We typically maneuver our hands based off of what we're going to do with them, right? That's just the function of the hand. If we're going to grab a wrench, if you notice, like watch your hand when you're grabbing for a cup. Your hand automatically forms to the contours of the cup or the shape of the cup before you pick it up. And so that's something else to keep in mind. If you want to draw hands, think about what the hands are doing. So, this is my thought process when I'm drawing hands. And what I want to do today is bypass all of the anatomy stuff that I said that I would mention, because I think that's kind of jumping the gun, and get more into breaking things down into planes. So to break this part down further, first it's good to understand that when you twist your hand around, right, and if we just look at the palm and we remove the fingers from the hand and the thumb, and we just look at this shape right here, it curves like that, right? This is the palmar side. This is the dorsal side where your knuckles are, right? And you can, render your knuckles as balls out here. Well, really, they're more inside of this right here. And then your fingers attach sort of like so. And then you have balls out here, and your fingers, and then balls out here. Right? Now this is a way that I can sometimes render the thumbs and the fingers, right? There's one less joint in the thumb, by the way. So, well, actually, no. I'm sorry. It's not one less joint. It's the there are three joints in the thumb, but the main one is down here. It goes one, two, three, and then here's the tip of your thumb, and your fingers go one, two, three for your fingers, and then one, two, three for your thumb. So, but yeah, this is another way that I render fingers, right? But to get back to what I'm saying, this overall shape of the palm curves around like this. And so what I want to do today is to help you understand how to break this down, right? If we're drawing it in space, this is the palmar side where you see the knuckles, right? And what I like to do is maybe X them out so that I understand that this is the palmar side or the dorsal side, and if we're looking at the palmar side, it curves around this way. Now the thing about the palmar side is it's very fleshy, and you tend to have, when it folds in on itself, sort of like this triangle that's formed by the fleshy muscle on the thumb side, right? So I'll just keep it as a big blocky shape. So here's the thumb side, and the fleshy part, which is that muscle that goes along the little finger. Out here. If I am ever trying to bend the fingers, it is so much easier to handle them all as a single unit, right? A lot of professors will tell you this. A lot of professionals will tell you this, at least in the beginning, And then once you get a handle on it, you can come up with different tricks that help you kind of get around the problem solving for drawing the hands, right? So let me clean this up for you for a little bit. But when your hand is balling in on itself, on the palmar side, you tend to get, little pockets here. That's sort of what happens. You have a pocket here, 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 and then this long pocket for the muscle along the outside of the pinky, and then of course this for the pocket of the thumb, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, if you want to render this and light shadow, okay, I'm at 8 minutes. Let me go ahead and wrap this up. So if you want to render the palmar side in light and shadow, curving it like that, I'm thinking like this, and I mentioned this the last time, right? It's much easier to break things down using angular lines. So if I'm looking at a cylinder and the light's coming from this way, this is the lightest part right here. Let's do this. Right? And then this part will be in shadow over here. A little crosshatch action to kind of save time. Right? And so that's that is my thinking whenever I'm breaking down the hand. Or any other object for that matter. Right? Whether it's a cat, human, car, what have you. So I'm going to put an X here for the knuckles. Let's say this person is reaching for dear life. So their hand will be outstretched. Everything's going to be outstretched, right? So, boom. Oh, something else to keep in mind. When you're looking at the hand from the side, right? This is the thumb side, and this is the back side. Let's do something like this. Yeah, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Right? Your knuckles appear, so your where your knuckles are on the backside, they are further back than the line, the line that segments your fingers on the palmar side. So if you're looking at your hands on the palmar side, you know, I know these are really quick drawings and they're not the prettiest. I'm just trying to get the point across. So where you have your finger segments on the palmar side, if you turn them this way to where it flips over, just do this. Right? It would be this, these lines are higher than your knuckles. If you want to get a true location of where your knuckles are, look at the back side of your hand, not the palmar side. Okay, so getting back to breaking this down into planes, and for those who don't understand, planes are basically different sides of an object. So if we're looking at a cube or a box, each side is a separate plane. And depending on where the light comes from will tell you which side goes in deep shadow, which side goes in half shadow, and which side does not get any shadow or is fully lit. So just a little crash course on that. So when I'm looking at the palm, use your own hand as a reference. It's always best to use a reference until you're comfortable drawing from imagination. And even when you get to the point where you can draw from imagination, you are really pulling from memory, right? And that's where it gets fun and creative, because then you can start to manipulate things in your mind, and that's where the art takes place. But for beginners, always use a reference when with these exercises that I'm talking about, and especially when you're trying to render something in light and shadow. So if you're doing, if you're creating a character from imagination, definitely use a reference for the clothing, for the anatomy, but especially for the lighting, because it looks generic when you don't. With that being said, you know, it's good to try to practice without a reference, because you don't want to use it as a crutch, because then they become shackles, you know, and that's self-defeating when you want to improve as an artist. So that's just my little soapbox rant. But use a reference, especially when rendering light for right now. So I'm looking at my own hand, and the light source is coming from this side. So I'm going to block my fingers in. All right, now the flesh will come up a little higher than the knuckles because of what I just pointed out, with the segmented fingers on the dorsal side. And I always, for masculine fingers, always block my fingertips. All right. Okay, so we're running at almost 15 minutes. All right, so let me speed this up. Okay, so if this person is reaching, and I'm looking at my own hand, I see tendons going back to the wrist. And remember, the wrist is a disc-shaped group of about 8 or 9 bones, and then your 2 forearm bones attached to that, right? So you have tendons that go back over your wrist bones. So I'm looking at these tendons and I'm using them as planes to break down my fingers. And I'm looking at my fingertips, and I block them in at the end, but along the fingers, you come back over here. Let's say this is a knuckle for my the midpoint of my finger, and I'm connecting it here. I just want it to come together like that, right? Or if this knuckle represents, if this knuckle represents here, and it's connecting to another portion of the finger, I'm breaking my fingers down into 3 planes, like so. So here's the shadow side. And yeah, even though this is spherical, I would break this down into angular planes as much as I could as well. Probably would start with like some kind of a square shape or something, and just kind of feel your way around it, something like this. Almost like a disco ball, right? It's just however you got to problem solve it. The most important thing is to practice, and eventually you come up with ways to figure this stuff out. All right, so now it's getting a little messy. Let me drop the opacity here. All right, and I got to finish this up. Okay. Boom, boom. It's that fleshy portion. Boom, fleshy portion. All right. Okay, so when I'm looking at my fingers, I'm seeing stretched out. I'm seeing like deep impressions, right? And then I'm seeing these tendons going back. So this is how I'm breaking down the planes on my hand. And I see this. Block the shadow shapes. Block them in. It's so much easier to block them in than to try to use curved lines. Angular lines are construction lines, and it's easier to correct and slowly build like a sculptor when you're using angular lines. Okay, and so now let me drop this bottom layer. Okay, and let me come in and add some shadow so I can finish this up. Whoops. All right, and let me enlarge this a little bit so you guys can see that. Okay, so dropping the opacity to 60 and the flow to 40. It just allows me to kind of control the pressure when I'm painting, right? It simulates a paintbrush. The harder you press, the more paint you apply, the more you let up, the lesser amount of paint that you apply. And we're going on 20 minutes. Man, time is flying by. Okay, so I'm looking at these planes, and that's not how that goes. So the light's coming from here. You block your shapes in. Boom, boom, like so. All of this is in shadow. All of this is in shadow. Again, I'm looking at my own hand, even though I drew this off the top of my head, or kind of from memory, not so much from the top of my head. And then I see a plane here. Now I'm just kind of taking a painterly approach. And so there's a groove along here, a groove along here. All right. So that's all I'm going to do for now. So just stick with this. All right. And this is, again, a request from a friend. And so I just wanted to get in here and show how I can apply this, right? Oh, and really quickly. Now, if we were to turn this in space, right, I would draw this shape for the main part of the hand, right? Because the plane is breaking, going down, right? So you can hopefully see that from this side. Yeah, I'll just do that for now. And if, like I was doing earlier, you can kind of put balls in here. And however you want to, I didn't start doing this until I got comfortable with drawing drawing the hand. Let's see what that looks like. Sometimes I'll be honest, man, sometimes I just throw some ugly drawings up, you know. And just bring this opacity up. Oops. Okay, boom. Now, I'm not looking at my hand when I'm doing this. And this isn't wholly accurate, But what I would do, though, is, let's say I'm working on, I'm working on an animation project now, but let's say I was working on a storyboard or a comic. What I would do is rough this in, kind of get an idea of the expression that I want this hand to make. And then I would look at my own hand, and then I would go back and I would correct it from here, right? Because you're not always going to nail it on the first try. At least I don't. I'm sure there's some of you out there who can. And if you're not getting paid professionally, you should be. So get out there and get at it. You know what I'm saying? So now, and I'm just kind of coming in and correcting it. And, I think this is not too bad. No, it's not too bad. And when I turn off that bottom layer, maybe you won't see the pinky, right, from this view. But that's, if I were to go ahead and break this down, because of this tendon going back to the wrist, I would make this its own separate plane. Now I'm looking at my hand. And I would make this its own separate plane down here. Of course, this would be in shadow. And I'm about to go over the line work. It's all good. is in shadow, and this would be in shadow, and of course all of this would be in shadow. And there's a little bit of light showing on this middle finger up here, right? So I guess this would be a separate plane too. All right, so there's this plane here. What I would do, because sometimes you'll see a plane and you think, okay, well, what do I do now? I know I clearly see a plane here. What do I do now? So what I would tend to do is just go and darken everything up, right? I'll double over the plane that I had down before, like so, and then the initial plane that I put down becomes a mid-tone, and the darker plane is the dark tone, right? And so now this cutoff point reads correctly, although a little darker than I would like, but you know, it still reads correctly. I could probably even put a little bit in there and maybe a little bit on this side, but yeah, I think I would just leave it like that. And let's see, make the entire background darker so you can kind of see how that looks. Did the wrong layer. He's coming. I apologize, guys. I'm at 30 minutes. These tutorials go by quickly. So if I take that out, I'm gonna leave a little highlight on the edge so you can see how that looks. There you go. So this is, if I were painting, let's say I were painting, I don't know, a professional athlete or a comic character, and I wanted to render it more realistically, this is how I would do it. Whether I'm working digitally or with traditional, gouache and acrylics. I don't really use acrylics that much. I used to. I don't think I've practiced with oil paints a few times, but I don't really use oil paints. I use watercolors more, but especially gouache. It's fun to work in these angular lines like this, right? Because you can literally build your drawing with these angular lines and then go in and break them down further into planes where you can then render it in shadow and light, right? And so the same wedge shape that you're starting the hand with eventually becomes the angular lines that you break it down with to get to this point. So just some things to take away. I meant to make this 5 to 10 minutes, but we're literally going on 30 minutes. So I apologize for that. And man, rest in peace to the legend Kobe and his daughter Gigi. I was just torn apart by that, man. Family members who were torn apart by that, and so if there's a lesson that I could take away from it is, grab life by the horn, and whatever it is you're passionate about doing, do it to the fullest, man. So, I did this tutorial for a couple of people who have problems with hands. you know, this is what I love to do. I hope this inspires them to go out and just kill it, man. And, you know, always study the game. Always study the game. You know, Kobe did, and, you know, he left a hell of a legacy. So it's tragic, man. But, you know, it's inspiring at the same time. It's just unfortunate it had to happen this way. So this is your boy Philco Joe checking out, and you know, I'll drop another episode next weekend, man. So share this with some friends, and you know, thoughts and prayers for Kobe's family, and for anybody else who's struggling or going through hard times. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Peace out. Thanks.